The coffee in front of Nathan had gone cold nearly an hour earlier, but he never touched it. Every time the restaurant door opened, his heart leaped with hope before sinking again. People came in laughing, families found their tables, couples held hands. But the woman he had spent weeks talking to never appeared. By the time the waitress quietly placed another cup of fresh coffee in front of him, Nathan had already accepted that he had been stood up. What he didn't know was that the next few minutes would uncover a secret that would change not only his evening, but the direction of his entire life. Before we continue, if you believe kindness still exists, if you believe people deserve second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment about where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world compassion still matters. Nathan Brooks had spent most of his adult life serving others. As a paramedic in Cedar Falls, Iowa, he had witnessed moments most people only saw in nightmares. He had held strangers' hands during their final breaths, comforted frightened children after accidents, and worked endless overnight shifts that left him emotionally exhausted. Somewhere between saving lives and sacrificing weekends, his own personal life quietly disappeared. Friends got married. Families grew. Holidays became just another shift on the ambulance. At 38 years old, he finally allowed himself to believe it wasn't too late to find someone to share life with. After much encouragement from his coworker Caleb, Nathan joined an online dating site. Weeks later, he met Rebecca. She seemed thoughtful, funny, and surprisingly understanding of his unpredictable schedule. Their conversations stretched late into the night. They spoke about favorite books, childhood memories, dreams they had quietly buried, and the hope that maybe life still held unexpected surprises. When she suggested meeting at a small family-owned diner just outside Des Moines, Nathan smiled for the first time in months. He arrived 20 minutes early, wearing the only sport jacket he owned. He even bought fresh flowers from a roadside stand, despite worrying they might seem old-fashioned. Every passing minute felt longer than the last. 15 minutes became 30. 30 became 60. His messages remained unread. The flowers slowly wilted beside the untouched coffee cup. The young waitress serving his table had noticed everything. Her name tag read Grace. She looked no older than 28, with tired eyes that somehow still carried warmth. She never asked uncomfortable questions. Instead, she quietly kept refilling his coffee while pretending not to notice the disappointment written across his face. Eventually, Grace sat down across from him, holding her own mug. She hesitated before speaking, almost as if she were debating whether she should remain silent forever. Then she softly admitted that there was something he deserved to know. Grace explained that earlier that afternoon a woman matching Rebecca's description had actually come into the diner. She had arrived almost 45 minutes before Nathan. But instead of sitting down, she spent several minutes crying near the entrance while staring at her phone. Before leaving, she had quietly told Grace that if the man named Nathan arrived, she wanted him to know the problem wasn't him. She simply wasn't brave enough to explain the truth herself. Nathan listened without interrupting. Grace continued. Rebecca had confessed that she had been diagnosed with an aggressive illness several months earlier. After years of difficult treatments, she believed no one deserved to begin a relationship with someone whose future had become uncertain. She had created the dating profile during a period when she felt hopeful. But as her health worsened, fear convinced her she should disappear rather than become someone else's burden. Nathan stared at the empty chair across from him. He didn't feel angry. He felt heartbroken for someone who believed they had to suffer alone. Grace admitted she had struggled all evening, deciding whether to tell him. Rebecca had asked her not to reveal anything beyond the apology. But watching Nathan patiently wait without bitterness convinced her that perhaps compassion deserved a chance too. For days, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. He wasn't obsessed with finding Rebecca. He was haunted by the realization that loneliness could convince good people they were unworthy of love. Life returned to its usual routine. Ambulance sirens replaced romantic expectations. Long hospital corridors replaced dreams of new beginnings. Nearly 3 weeks later, Nathan responded to an emergency call involving a community food pantry. An elderly volunteer had collapsed while organizing donations. As paramedics stabilized the patient, Nathan noticed someone quietly sorting canned goods nearby. It was Grace. She recognized him immediately. After the ambulance left, Grace explained, she volunteered there every Saturday because her mother had once relied on the pantry after losing her job. Helping others had become her way of honoring difficult seasons rather than forgetting them. Nathan stayed behind after his shift to help unload donated boxes. Neither of them planned it. Neither expected anything. They simply worked side by side. Week after week, they continued volunteering together. Nathan learned Grace was raising her 12-year-old brother Samuel. After both parents had passed away within 2 years of each other, college dreams had been replaced by 2 jobs and endless responsibilities. Yet somehow she still smiled at every child who entered the pantry. Grace learned that Nathan carried invisible scars from years in emergency medicine. Faces of patients he couldn't save often visited him during sleepless nights. He had become excellent at rescuing strangers while forgetting how to care for himself. Slowly their conversations became longer, not because they were searching for romance, because both finally found someone who listened without trying to fix everything. Months passed. Winter covered Iowa with heavy snow. One evening, the diner where they first met hosted a charity fundraiser for families facing medical hardships. Grace convinced Nathan to attend. As music quietly filled the room, the restaurant owner approached Nathan carrying an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Rebecca had left it months earlier. She had instructed the owner to give it to Nathan only if she never returned. With trembling hands, Nathan unfolded the paper. Rebecca wrote that meeting him online had restored something she believed she had permanently lost. Hope. She apologized for disappearing but confessed she couldn't bear watching another good man build dreams around someone whose future was uncertain. She thanked him for unknowingly reminding her that kindness still existed. She ended by asking him to continue living with the same compassion that had already touched countless lives. Nathan quietly folded the letter. There were tears, not because he had lost someone he barely knew, but because he finally understood how deeply fear can isolate people who desperately need connection. That night, he and Grace spoke for hours beneath softly falling snow outside the diner. No dramatic declarations, no fairy tale ending, just 2 people who had both experienced disappointment choosing honesty instead of pretending to be stronger than they were. Over the next year, their friendship naturally grew into something deeper. Samuel began calling Nathan whenever he needed advice about school or baseball. Nathan started looking forward to weekends more than overtime shifts. Grace laughed more often. Nathan smiled without forcing it. Together, they organized free community health fairs, collected winter coats for struggling families, and created a volunteer network connecting first responders with local charities. The man who once believed his greatest heartbreak was being abandoned during a blind date eventually realized that painful evening had quietly redirected his entire future. Sometimes the greatest blessings don't arrive through the door we're watching. Sometimes they sit beside us while we're staring at the entrance. And sometimes God answers our prayers by giving us someone we never expected, instead of someone we thought we wanted. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need encouragement today, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us hope often appears in unexpected ways. Special request: before this story ends, please comment below. Kindness always finds its way. We'd love to know if you still believe one small act of compassion can change someone's life. Years later, Nathan often returned to that same diner. Not because it reminded him of rejection, but because it reminded him that life's greatest turning points rarely look important while they're happening. Every anniversary, he and Grace ordered 2 cups of coffee at the same booth, where everything began. 1 cup was for them. The second quietly honored a woman named Rebecca, whose difficult choice unknowingly brought 2 broken lives together. Nathan never forgot her letter, and Grace never forgot the lonely man patiently waiting with wilted flowers. Together, they proved that while disappointment may introduce itself without warning, hope has a remarkable way of arriving just when we think the story is over. Sometimes the person who changes your life isn't the one you were waiting for. It is the one who sees your pain, chooses kindness, and has the courage to simply sit down and say, "Can I tell you something?" Hot. S&T